My wife chose her ex-boyfriend, and I chose his ex-wife. The shrill ring of our phones shattered the midnight silence. One call was for me, from my mother who was gravely ill. The other was for my wife, from her ex-boyfriend, who was freshly divorced and seeking comfort. Without a moment's hesitation, my wife chose him. Our friends were appalled, urging her to reconsider. Her reply was cold. It's his mother who is sick, not mine. What does it have to do with me? In that moment of absolute heartbreak, I met his ex-wife. She took my hand in hers and asked softly, "Are you still willing to marry me now?" That night, both my wife, Chloe, and I were jolted awake by our phones. My mother was on the line, her voice strained with pain. She said a sharp agony was tearing through her chest and begged me to take her to the hospital. On Chloe's end, it was Leo, her ex. His marriage had just imploded, and he was sobbing uncontrollably into the phone. Chloe was out of bed in an instant, throwing on clothes to rush to his side. "Chloe, wait," I pleaded, grabbing her arm. "My mom said her chest hurts badly. Your ex." "I heard you," she snapped, shaking me off. "We'll talk later. Keep me updated." She waved a dismissive hand, finished dressing, and was out the door, gone to soothe her former lover. I stood there in the silent bedroom, unsure if she had truly processed a single word I said. A bitter taste filled my mouth. On one hand, my mother was facing a medical emergency. On the other, a man was upset about his divorce. Was there even a comparison? A chilling realization washed over me. Perhaps in her heart, our 3 years of marriage, our shared life, meant less than the man she had left behind. My father passed away when I was young, and my mother had raised me alone through sheer hard work and sacrifice. She was the most important person in my world. At the hospital, it was a blur of frantic activity. Examinations, consent forms, a whirlwind of medical jargon. Finally, they wheeled my mother into the operating room. The wait was an agonizing eternity. Alone in the sterile corridor, my mind raced with the worst possible scenarios. I had never felt so utterly alone, with no one to offer a shred of comfort. The image of Chloe comforting Leo while my mother was under the knife was a visceral, gripping pain, a knot of ice in my chest that made it hard to breathe. Fear and loneliness threatened to swallow me whole. Thankfully, the tumor was benign. The surgery was a success. As the hours bled into the early morning, I finally watched my mother sleeping peacefully in her recovery room, and a wave of relief washed over me, leaving me weak. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Chloe. "How's mom? Is she okay?" I stared at the message, the words blurring. Then, I simply turned off my phone. In that moment, something inside me shifted. A heavy weight I didn't even know I was carrying finally lifted. Before, I would have replied instantly, no matter how busy I was. Now, after the long, lonely vigil outside the operating room, that urgency was gone. There was no guilt, only a quiet emptiness. The next evening, I was filling a kettle in the hallway when I saw Chloe approaching. "Was mom's condition that serious last night? Why didn't you tell me?" she demanded, her tone accusatory. There was no hint of apology, only blame. Something inside me snapped. I slammed the heavy plastic kettle onto the floor. It cracked with a sound like a gunshot, water splashing across the polished linoleum. "Even if I had told you, would you have cared?" I roared, my voice raw with a fury I had never shown her before. "You only care about your precious ex-boyfriend." We argued, right there in the hospital corridor. In the past, I had always been the one to back down, to remember her good qualities and smooth things over, even when she was wrong. But this time, I couldn't contain the rage. People peeked out of their rooms to watch the spectacle, but I didn't care about the embarrassment. I didn't back down. "If you had told me she needed surgery, of course I would have come," Chloe shouted back, her eyes filling with tears before she turned and ran. I didn't stop her. The thought of chasing after her didn't even cross my mind. A few days later, my mother was recovering well. A critical project at work demanded my attention, and my boss was pressing for results, so I couldn't take extended leave. I never asked Chloe to help. Instead, I hired a private nurse to look after my mother. After a long day at the office, I arrived at the hospital around 9 in the evening. My mother told me Chloe had visited and that she had been crying. My mom, with her soft heart, was fond of Chloe. She gently chided me, saying that all couples hit rough patches and that we should learn to compromise. She even urged me to be the one to apologize. I just told her to rest and not to worry, assuring her I would handle it. I fell into a routine. Work during the day, the hospital at night. For 7 straight days, I didn't contact Chloe. I didn't go home. I felt no impulse to. In previous arguments, being apart from her for even half a day would fill me with anxiety, making me question if I was in the wrong. Now, that feeling was a distant echo. Occasionally, a memory of her past kindness would surface, but it was always tainted by the shadow of her ex-boyfriend. A week later, my mother was discharged. I still didn't return to our apartment, choosing instead to stay at my mother's place to care for her. This worried her deeply. One evening, as I was washing her feet, she spoke to me, her voice filled with concern. "Son, you should go home. I'm fine here. Your marriage is what's important. You know, while you were at work, Chloe was here looking after me. She took time off work to do it. She's a stubborn girl and made me promise not to tell you. But seeing you two like this breaks my heart." Her words touched a part of me I thought had gone cold. Memories flooded back. I met Chloe in college. She was popular, pursued by many, but she chose Leo. Their relationship was short-lived. He broke up with her for another girl, Hannah. That was my chance. I confessed my feelings, and to my surprise, she accepted almost immediately. Our love story was sweet then. She would have breakfast delivered to my dorm. We would walk across campus, hand in hand, as she playfully asked me to count the stars with her. For her, I stood in the pouring rain outside her dorm, singing her favorite songs. When I got sick from the downpour, she defied the rules and came to the men's dorm to take care of me, bringing me medicine and washing my clothes. She even saved up her living expenses for months to buy me my very first computer. I remembered every single act of kindness. After we got married and discovered she couldn't have children, I never held it against her. I shielded her from my mother's questions, inventing excuse after excuse for why we were waiting. The one thing I could never accept was her continued, close friendship with Leo after we were married. And the night of my mother's surgery, that was the moment my heart truly fractured. "Listen to me, son. Go home," my mother urged, her gaze serious. "I can manage on my own. I don't need you here." Not wanting to worry her further, I nodded. "Okay, Mom." That night, around 10, I was scrolling through my phone when a message from Chloe popped up. "How is Mom's recovery going?" It had been half a month since our fight. This was her first time reaching out, her first attempt at an olive branch. It was the first time she had ever softened first. But I felt nothing. I simply closed my phone and went to sleep. The next morning, Chloe came to visit my mother. Bowing to my mother's silent plea, I finally went home with her. Back in our apartment, I sat on the couch, watching television. Chloe came and sat on my lap, wrapping her arms around my neck. "Are you still mad at me?" she murmured. "Don't be. I've thought about it, and I know I was wrong. But that night, you just said her chest hurt. I didn't think it was that serious. And Leo, he had just gotten divorced. He was so heartbroken." I pushed her off me before she could finish. She should never have said his name. Perhaps she still didn't understand what it meant to be a married woman. Chloe said nothing more. She simply went into our bedroom and locked the door. We were living under the same roof, but a new, colder war had begun. We barely spoke. I knew she was waiting for me to apologize, just like I always had. But not this time. A few days later, a new post appeared on her social media feed. It was a photo of her and Leo, sitting together on a balcony. The caption read, "He's been so depressed since the divorce. I'm so worried he might do something drastic." The post was set to be visible only to me. I looked at it, closed my phone, and threw myself into my work, focusing all my energy on the project at hand. Sometime later, the project was a resounding success, earning a huge profit for the company. It wasn't the first time I had delivered such results. The CEO, pleased with my performance, promoted me to vice president. My colleagues flooded me with congratulations. In the past, I would have avoided any after-work celebrations, eager to get home to Chloe. I always figured she was tired from her own job and deserved a delicious meal and a relaxing evening. But this time, I threw a large banquet, inviting nearly everyone from the office. After dinner, I went with a few senior managers to a karaoke bar and then a sauna. It was liberating. It was 3 in the morning when I stumbled back home, drunk. I tripped on my way in, crashing into something that shattered with a loud noise. My hands were instantly full of glass shards and blood. The crash woke Chloe. She came out of the bedroom and flipped on the light. When she saw the scene, her first reaction wasn't to check if I was hurt. Instead, she shoved me aside with a look of pure fury. Only then did I see that I had landed on a small fishbowl, crushing a tiny goldfish. "You killed it. You killed it," Chloe shrieked, her eyes instantly turning red. My hand was throbbing, stinging from a dozen tiny cuts. "It's just a goldfish," I slurred, annoyed. "How much could it possibly be worth?" It's not about the money. You have no idea what it meant to me, she cried, cradling the dead fish in her palm as if it were a precious jewel. I was done arguing. I gritted my teeth against the pain in my hand. I'm too drunk to drive. You need to take me to the hospital. Chloe looked up at me, her face a mask of disgust. You're a grown man. Are you really making a fuss over a little cut? I froze. Then, slowly, I pulled myself up from the floor and staggered out of the apartment. Standing downstairs in the cool night air, waiting for a taxi, a bitter truth settled in. A living, breathing person mattered less to her than an insignificant fish. At the hospital, with an 4 drip in my arm, I mindlessly scrolled through social media. A post from a user named Bittersweet Muse caught my eye. The photo was of a dead goldfish. My goldfish. I clicked on her profile. The post read, "When he gave me the goldfish, he told me that as long as it was healthy, he would be happy. But it died the very first day it came to my house. What should I do? Should I buy another one that looks similar and pretend it's the same one? Ethan, you are such a petty, vindictive man. You must have done this on purpose." In her mind, I was less important than a goldfish. In that instant, it felt as though the final, invisible door in my heart slammed shut, its lock clicking firmly into place. My promotion to VP brought more responsibilities and frequent invitations to after-hours events with clients. Where I once would have resisted, I now embraced the diversions. For 2 straight weeks, I came home after midnight. One evening, with no engagements, I left work early. As I stepped out of the building, I saw Chloe's car parked by the curb. Leo was in the passenger seat. He spotted me and waved. "Hey, Ethan. Long time no see." I ignored him and started to walk away. Chloe got out of the car and called my name. "Ethan, it's our annual class reunion tonight. You didn't forget, did you?" She glanced back at Leo. "He's coming with me." I got into the back seat. Leo kept shooting me strange looks from the front, but said nothing more to me, chatting and laughing with Chloe the entire way. At the private room in the restaurant, the first person we saw was Leo's ex-wife, Hannah. Leo moved toward her, but she deliberately avoided him, choosing a seat to my right. A dark scowl settled on Leo's face. After the initial greetings, dinner was served and conversations began to flow. Leo sat by himself, drinking sullenly. His ex-wife paid him no mind, but Chloe repeatedly tried to stop him from drinking more. Seizing an opportunity, Leo suddenly grabbed Chloe's hand. "If you weren't married," he asked, his voice loud enough for the whole room to hear, "would you choose me or Ethan?" The question hung in the air, instantly silencing the room. Everyone stared, shocked. "You're drunk," Chloe said, pulling her hand away. "I'm not drunk." Leo stood up, swaying slightly, and pointed a finger at me. "Ethan, you think I'm drunk?" He looked at me with a challenging, meaningful glint in his eyes. I didn't fly into a rage. I didn't flip the table. I simply smiled calmly. "How about this? I'll divorce Chloe right now and give you 2 a chance." My words landed like a bomb. Stunned silence, followed by gasps. Chloe's face was a mask of disbelief. "Ethan, what are you saying?" she yelled. "Leo is drunk and talking nonsense. But are you drunk too? Why don't you ask Leo if I'm drunk?" I replied, my smile never wavering. Even the intoxicated Leo was momentarily stunned. It was another classmate who broke the tension, laughing loudly. "Wow, you guys are really taking the jokes to another level at this reunion. Am I getting old?" Everyone else forced a laugh, but Chloe's face remained pale and strained. After the dinner, someone suggested a second round of karaoke. I declined. As I walked out of the room, Chloe caught up to me. "Ethan, what did you mean by that in there?" she demanded. "What do you think I meant?" I countered. "Do you have to be so petty with Leo?" she said, her face flushed with anger. "Don't you know he just got divorced? He's in a lot of pain. He was just unhappy. Had too much to drink, and made a joke. But you, is divorce a word you can just throw around? I don't understand how you've become so contemptible." "Contemptible?" I looked at her and laughed. I didn't want to argue. I just turned and walked away. Chloe started to follow, but then a commotion from the room. Leo had apparently passed out, made her stop. She stamped her foot in frustration, then turned back to help him. That was her. I was never her priority. Downstairs, waiting for a taxi amidst the city's neon glow, I felt a strange sense of clarity. Maybe my words at the dinner table were not a joke. Maybe this relationship had run its course. It was time for it to end. Was what you said at the table the truth? Or were you just angry? A soft voice asked beside me. I turned. It was Hannah, Leo's ex-wife. She stood there, holding a black handbag, her long dress and hair swaying in the gentle breeze. "What do you think?" I asked, looking back at her. I think it was the truth, she said with a small smile. She hailed a taxi, and before getting in, she looked at me. Ladies first, you don't mind? I smiled back and waved goodbye. I watched the taxi merge into traffic, carrying the surprisingly perceptive woman away. Though I didn't know the reasons for her divorce from Leo, it was clear she was intelligent. She had seen right through me. I got home about an hour before Chloe, who stormed in, furious. Ethan, you still haven't explained yourself. What did you mean by that remark? Is that a joke you can just make? You embarrassed me in front of all our old classmates. Do you realize that? I just smiled. In her world, what Leo did was a harmless, amusing joke, something she probably enjoyed hearing. My reaction was the problem. You're smiling, she shrieked, pointing at me. How can you be so heartless, you? Let's get a divorce, I said, my voice calm and even. Chloe froze, her tirade cut short. I didn't bother saying anything else. I stood up and went to take a shower. When I came out, she was still standing in the same spot, tears streaming down her face. The sight reminded me of the time before our wedding. My family wasn't wealthy. Her parents looked down on me, demanding a new house, a hefty bride price, and all the traditional gifts. We couldn't possibly afford it. Chloe had cried then, too, threatening a hunger strike, insisting she would marry me no matter what. Her persistence finally wore her parents down. They conceded on everything but the house. Chloe secretly gave me all her savings, and with what my mom and I could scrape together, we managed a down payment. I remembered every one of her sacrifices. Lately, it felt like I was counting them every day, perhaps as a way to numb myself, or because a part of me couldn't bear to let go. I looked at her, standing there in her silent tears. I still said nothing and turned to go to my room. Just as my hand touched the doorknob, her voice came, small and broken. You were just saying that because you were angry, right? I looked back at her, her face streaked with tears. I could never understand her. She clearly had feelings for me, so why couldn't she let go of another man? In the end, I couldn't be completely ruthless. I guess so, I said, before entering my room and closing the door. Perhaps that night was a wake-up call. Chloe changed. She greeted me warmly every morning and started making breakfast. When I worked late, she would cook dinner and wait for me, no matter how late I came home. One night, I got home close to 10. She was asleep at the dining table, her head resting on her arms. The food on the table was untouched. She had been waiting. The sound of the door opening startled her awake. I made your favorite dishes today, she said, smiling. I sat down at the table. She handed me a pair of chopsticks. Do you know what tomorrow is? It hit me then. Our third wedding anniversary. Hee hee, it's our third anniversary tomorrow, she said brightly. You eat first, I'll go heat up the food. As she walked to the kitchen, she looked back. Remember to come home early tomorrow. I have a surprise for you. Her efforts no longer moved me. I remembered her kindness, but it was always conditional, existing only in the absence of her ex. The next day at noon, I was taking a coffee break and scrolling through my social media feed. I saw a new post from Leo. It was a picture. The back of the woman in the photo was unmistakably Chloe. The photographer, whose hand was visible in the frame, was wearing a distinctive blue watch. It was the exact model I had told Chloe countless times was my absolute favorite. The caption read, "Was having a really tough day, but your visit made everything better. Thanks for the gift, I love it." I didn't know if he posted it as a boast or a direct provocation. That evening, Chloe came home and presented me with a brand new suit. She tried to hug me, but I pushed her away. Silence descended between us once more. We had been sleeping in separate rooms since our last Cold War began. That night, she knocked on my locked door. Ethan, open the door. I think we need to talk. It's not what you think with Leo. We're just friends, nothing more. Just friends? The idea was laughable. A married woman and a newly divorced man. Such pure friendship. I pretended to be asleep, ignoring her pleas. Half an hour later, she was back, her tone now angry as she kicked the door. Ethan, have you had enough? I've already explained and apologized. What more do you want? Yes, I admit I care about Leo. A lot. I know it makes you uncomfortable, but you have to understand, he was my first love. You can have 100 relationships, but you never forget your first, right? Open the door. Are you going to be petty like this forever? Open up. Her self-righteous justifications became a strange lullaby. The next morning, I opened the door to find her asleep on the floor outside my room. I covered her with a blanket and left. This became a pattern for a while. Her relentless attempts and my cold indifference. The company was expanding, and we needed to hire new talent. During the interviews, I came face to face with Hannah, Leo's ex-wife, and our old classmate. She wasn't surprised to see me and was friendly, even cracking a few jokes. Her resume was impressive. She passed the interview and became my colleague. With 2 urgent projects on my plate, I was leading my team through long hours, often working until 10 at night. The constant stress and lack of rest were taking a toll. One evening, I was alone in my office, rubbing my temples. Exhausted. It was Hannah. She had come in quietly and placed a cup of coffee on my desk. "Thanks," I said, taking a sip. It was black and incredibly bitter. I winced. Hannah smiled. "I didn't know if you take sugar, but I figured this flavor suited your current mood. Thought you might appreciate it." It felt deliberate. I looked at her. "What kind of logic is that?" "Just the obvious kind," she said with a shrug. I took another sip of the bitter coffee. Just then, Mark from my department came in with several food containers. "Mr. Evans, your wife brought this for you." "She did." I glanced out the window. It was pouring rain. "The rain is really coming down," Mark said. "Your wife was soaked. I told her to come in and wait for it to let up, but she said she didn't want to upset you, so she left." "Is she gone?" "Yes, sir." "Thank you, Mark." I dismissed him. "Aren't you going to eat?" Hannah asked from behind me. "No appetite," I said, staring out at the downpour. A conflicting mix of emotions churned inside me. How could she be so caring, preparing a meal and bringing it to me in a storm, and yet be so incapable of letting go of her ex? "Well, I'm a bit hungry," Hannah said lightly. "If you don't want it to go to waste, I can help. Be my guest." As she ate, I found myself asking, "Can you tell me why you and Leo got divorced?" It was impolite, but I had to know. Hannah paused, looking at me. "If you didn't want to share, you should have just said so." "That's not it," I clarified. "We're old classmates and now colleagues. You know I'm not like that." "All right," she said with a smile. "On the condition that you treat me to dinner sometime. I'll tell you everything then." She didn't say more, and I didn't press the issue. Sometime later, both projects were completed successfully. My team and I were given a 7-day holiday. Hannah's performance had been exceptional, and I had promoted her to project manager for my next major assignment. She was quickly becoming my most capable deputy. "Any plans for the vacation?" I asked her. "Just staying home," she said. "You?" "Same. My mom needs to be hospitalized for some checkups, so I'll be looking after her." "A good son," Hannah said, giving me a thumbs up. As I was about to leave, she called out, "You still want to know why I divorced Leo? If you're not busy tomorrow, come over for dinner. I'll tell you." I just waved and left without a word. I went straight to my mom's place and took her to the hospital. After getting her settled, I sat by her bed, peeling an apple for her. "Mom needs to be hospitalized, and you didn't even tell me?" "As her daughter-in-law, I have a duty to be here, don't I?" Chloe's voice came from behind me. Her words were like a needle, pricking the raw wound of that night my mother had surgery, reminding me of the fear and loneliness while she was comforting another man. "Oh, it's just a checkup, not a big deal," my mom said, trying to ease the tension. She took Chloe's hand and started chatting with her warmly. I handed the apple to my mom. "Mom, I've been working on a couple of big projects and I'm exhausted. I'm going to head home and get some sleep." Go," my mom said, waving me off cheerfully. "Chloe's here, it's fine. Besides, it's just a checkup, not surgery." The word surgery made Chloe flinch. An uncomfortable look passed over her face. "You take good care of Mom," I said, looking directly at Chloe before leaving. Back home, I thought about Hannah's invitation and Chloe's recent changes and fell into a deep sleep. I woke up the next day around noon. Chloe was sitting by the bed, watching me. "Have you been that tired from work?" "2 back-to-back projects. Jab on Dao Shidan, you know how it is." I replied. "I made some soup. I'll bring some for you before I take the rest to Mom," she said with a smile and left the room. Her phone was on the nightstand. I had no intention of looking, but it kept buzzing incessantly. My eyes drifted to the screen. It was a stream of messages from Leo. "My head is killing me again today. Is the soup ready yet? Waiting for your soup. By the way, I noticed you're getting more lines on your forehead lately. Is it because of Ethan? He really doesn't know how to appreciate a wonderful woman like you. If it were me." Reading the messages, a wave of irritation and disgust washed over me. "Have you seen my phone?" Chloe asked, walking back in with a bowl of soup. She saw me looking at the screen, and her expression changed instantly. She put the soup down and snatched the phone from my hand. After reading the messages, she turned on me, her voice sharp with accusation. "How could you go through my phone? Don't you know what privacy is? You." I looked at her defiant, righteous anger. Enough, I warned.